I mute myself because it's annoying. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Planet FPL, the world where everything revolves around fantasy Premier League. My name's Suj.
My name's James. I don't think it was ready for me to press record then, was you?
I was about to say something. It doesn't matter. It's all good. Do you want to talk about fantasy Premier League, do we? Do you want to talk about my selling Evan Nielsen like you wanted to yesterday so that I could buy Livramento and Jacob Murphy on my wild card? Do you want to talk about that now?
Well done. Congratulations.
Oi, oi, oi.
Yeah.
Lovely jubbly, easy win. At half an hour in, you're thinking, oh, this could be messy for Leicester yesterday. I really worried that it was going to get
It was
messy.
much earlier than that. I mean, the sheer manner
Well,
of the second goal with Fabian Schär hitting the bar from, I think the first person to ever hit the crossbar from his own half in Premier League history, I think was the stat last night. That led to Jacob Murphy's goal was like, oh, the manner of this, they are in so much trouble. So they actually deserve a little bit credit for not getting completely tanked. But
yeah, but also
Newcastle knew job was done.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Foot off the gas. The biggest takeaway I think from last night is everybody just moving that captain's armband onto Alexander Isak for the double game week. Because yes, he didn't return yesterday, but he went off early. We know he's fit and he's got 2 home games. Oh yes.
Yeah, I actually think the biggest takeaway from last night, something that didn't even happen, is probably Eddie Howe's words on Anthony Gordon. Probably sounds like he's not going to make the double.
I didn't hear those.
By his words last night after the game. Yeah. So anyway, me and Calyton will cover Leicester Newcastle in a bit more detail on the Calyton and James show.
Good.
It's People's Poll today.
Poll, indeed. What were the runners and riders? We've seen some of the questions online, and we know the clear winner.
So me and Cates will probably cover off we're certainly going to cover off Kevin De Bruyne was one of the options in the vote. It just felt a very unique one that he's been such a magnificent footballer. He almost deserved his own kind of place in terms of conversation. Me and Cates are going to talk about KDB, who's obviously leaving Man City at the end of the season a little bit tomorrow. We may also touch on semi-automated offside technology. Not one for when to talk about VAR too much, although I suspect it may come up on this podcast a little bit as well. But that is coming into play this weekend. So we're just going to probably have a little explain of how that's going to work this weekend as well. But absolute landslide winner on this one, which I've seen a lot of people talking about it on mainstream media. The FPL community is talking about it. Is Premier League football a bit boring at the moment?
At the moment, or are we talking about this season as a whole, James? Like, is the 2024 season, 2024-25 season, one of the more boring seasons? And yes, it is. I guess Gary Neville's kind of rant on Monday, if you can call it a rant, about both teams being a bit passive and not really looking to win. He kind of had a moan about the tactical rigidity of the way that certain teams were playing, being a bit dull and sucking the life out of it. So, I think the way we want to look at this, I suppose you've had to think about it. I've had to think about it. We've not really debated it or discussed it in advance of recording this episode, which is how we like to roll. And I've got a few things jotted down in my mind of reasons why it could be considered to be one of a more boring season, or football could be a little bit more dull at the moment. You've got your list, and we're going to go through them and see if we match up. Where I'll maybe chuck a few things out there and see if they are on you. I'm so sure that there's going to be a lot of overlap here. But you wanted to start right at home in terms of who
I don't want
you
to,
and
but I think we should.
support.
Yeah. No,
Yeah,
the only thing I literally said to you before we started is that I think first and foremost we should state who we support. Now, most of you would know that I support Tottenham and you support West Ham. I think we should acknowledge that as part of this conversation to start with, because frankly, you and I and our clubs have had shit football seasons. So I think we're approaching it
as have Manchester United, who are
loads of others.
Big,
to be honest,
big clubs.
This is the way it will always work, right? The chances are 75% of Premier League fans are probably going to have a disappointing season. This is where it's normally going to work. So most people actually commonly are going to be unhappy, i.e. you don't reach their goals. There's only so many teams who can qualify for the Champions League, qualify for Europe. And even that can happen where, Man City, whatever Man City do between now and the end of the season, yes, they could win a trophy, but certainly in terms of their league campaign, it's a failure. Even if they finish top 5, right? Mm-hmm. Chelsea and Newcastle have finished top 5. It's only kind of really hitting an objective, really, in my opinion. But I wanted to say that because it's certainly in my case, it's obviously been a horrendous league campaign. But I wonder if you and I respectively supported Nottingham Forest and Liverpool, if we'd be sitting here going, well, I think it's been a great season. And there's a chance that we would feel like that, right? Because
Yeah,
those two teams have exceeded this season.
chucking the likes of Fulham, chucking the likes of Bournemouth,
Bournemouth,
and I'd say Brighton as well into the mix, as they've been pushing hard for Europe and even top five for quite a
2 weeks
long
ago,
time.
yeah, but not now, maybe.
Yeah, maybe yes, but over the course of the season, I mean, look at the number of games they've lost. They've just drawn too many over the course of the season. I think so, but so you kind of there's your own hat, which is your own football club. Yes, mine's been rubbish. Yours has been rubbish. Manchester United's been rubbish. So we would look at it from a lens of it's been disappointing. Then you look at it from the smaller clubs that have overperformed. They will definitely be looking at it from a lens of it's been a good season and we've had some great results. The third thing, though, James, is to look at it from a neutral hat. So overseas fans or fans that are maybe not match going and a little bit more casual, absolutely no disrespect in that, or the TV companies, they get a lot of enjoyment and excitement from the big games, right? It's always the Liverpool versus United and Tottenham versus Arsenal and so on. And those games don't exist in the same way when some of these bigger clubs are doing particularly badly, when Manchester City have had this awful run. And so I think the neutrals might be sitting in the same camp of it's not as good a season. Like so many years we've seen these titanic clashes between Liverpool and City or these kind of games, Arsenal, Manchester United. With the ease that Liverpool have won the league this year and the way that Manchester United, Tottenham and Man City for such a large chunk of it have been rubbish. How many games this season can you look back at and say they're all-time Premier League great games and clashes and stuff? Those neutral games, I would call them, between the bigger clubs haven't existed for the more casual neutral fans as well.
Yeah,
Derby games. I mean, I'm looking at like even derby games. You look at Tarkovsky's like last minute equaliser. Drama, that was great, right? But there's not been that much of that this season. Whereas you look, the City Chelsea 4-4, that was last season, for example.
Yeah,
and
that was the game I had in my head. Yeah,
those are like games you look, and some of these City Liverpool games we've had under Klopp and Pep and stuff, you look at them and you're like, proper. I don't think those kind of clashes have existed, and that's because some of these bigger clubs have been pretty inept this year, and that adds to the lack of excitement overall.
I remember speaking to you about that game the next day, and I was like, that's an all-time top 10 Premier League game. And I still feel that way like a year on. It was just an incredible game of football, the 4-4 between Chelsea and
Makes
City
the hairs on the
year.
back of your neck stand up thinking about it a little bit, doesn't it?
Not quite now, but it was just a brilliant game of football. Ended in a draw. It had the story of Cole Palmer with the late penalty against the club he'd been with as a kid, etc., and had obviously sold him in the summer. When you were speaking, I was trying to think, shit, what game this year would fall anywhere near that category? And actually, you saying the Tarkovsky equaliser, that's arguably the moment of the season.
Yeah.
In terms of the drama at the end that made you go, oh my God. I don't think we've had much of that.
No. The kind of one-sided games in one way or another. And as for football purists, people who love tactical battles and love the way teams set up, who love the way that Iraola looks at his team and his formation, the way Bournemouth play and stuff like that, you can get excited and into Bournemouth doing well and Fulham doing well and Brighton with a manager who just finishes A-levels or something. That's an 18-year-old for people that are outside of the UK. You know, those things are interesting for the likes of you or me who are maybe more into the weeds of football. For your more average fan, it's like, all right, they've done well this year. They'll be gone next year and it won't be that interesting anymore and that kind of thing. I think you need to understand a little bit more about the fact that Bournemouth's a tiny little club with a small stadium for them to be doing so well, to get caught up within the story. And a lot of more neutral fans, it's not that interesting and exciting. Whereas the superstars of Manchester United playing the superstars of Manchester City is a more exciting story. And those stories haven't been there this year. So I can see why it's an exciting season for these other clubs. I think the levelling out of the playing field is a good thing for the league. but the lens you're looking at it does affect whether you feel it's exciting or not.
That's interesting because look, if you said to me, James, pick one team to watch for the rest of this season, unfortunately, I'd still pick Tottenham because I'm a loathe to punishment and suffering. But actually, otherwise, I'd pick Nottingham Forest
Yep.
because that's the story right now is what's happening around that area of the table. And over Forest's shoulder, there's four teams who've all qualified for the Champions League over the last couple of years, including the Man City would normally be competing for the title at this stage, who are breathing down their necks. Can Forest hold them off? And I've been quite clear for a while saying, yeah, I think they're going to do it. But if I had to just watch one team for the rest of the season, be like, yeah, put Forest on the telly every week. I watch Forest because there's something really important at stake. Now, but Forest, though, is actually where kind of this came from, this idea. It wasn't Gary Neville talking on Sunday. I listed this down as a topic to cover last Tuesday night. Because while watching Nottingham Forest and Manchester United, with half hour to go, I said to the missus, I'll take my boy to bed. And she went, you sure? I said, yeah, I know this is finishing 1-0. And that's not a discredit to Forest, it's a credit to Forest. So I've seen this game and exactly what I'm getting. They're going to sit in. It's 5-4-1 now. They're going to go low block. They're going to ask the opponent, what can you do to break them down? And from United's perspective, they've been much better. I think it's actually, despite Sunday's game being shit, shown again, a little bit more space in certain times against better quality opponents, actually look a little bit better. And I wrote that down that night and went, I think we need to talk about this because I'd also watched Forest on the Saturday before against Brighton. So as a consequence, I'm saying Forest is the team I'd watch. And yet they bored me to tears, really, in the two games. And so they should, right, what they're doing. It's not to discredit them for winning at Brighton on penalties on the Saturday beforehand. They deserve to win that game as well that night. Brighton were particularly disappointing. But it was the FA Cup quarterfinals. It was like everybody was really looking forward to it, I felt. If you just got your fantasy lens on and stuff, I get it. It's no consequence to fantasy other than who might double afterwards and stuff. But was really looking forward to it. It's like it's fresh colours, fresh teams at this stage. They've all got a decent little chance of winning it. And at the end of that weekend, it was like, this feels a bit flat. And the only game I managed to catch was Brighton against Forest. And it was 120 minutes of pure pain.
Well, do you think if we move on to a slightly different topic, then one of the things that I had down, and I think it'll be on yours, is tactics. And I don't know whether you look at it as tactics are more boring or that people are now more tactically aware and set up to not lose first rather than win first. So tactics are now designed to be not lose first, win second, but also teams are much more tactically aware of how to nullify other teams and that kind of thing. So what are your thoughts on the impact of tactics? Because you can't say that Bournemouth's high press is like a defensive sit-in low block strategy. It's a much more aggressive attacking strategy. You can't say like Man City at their finest is not good attacking football, but there is a let's not lose first. Like the fact that both teams in the Manchester derby are happy with a 0-0, we think kind of coming away happy with 0 is because they didn't lose rather than the chasing of a victory.
I think the teams, by the way, not necessarily the fans.
Yeah,
just for clarity.
Yeah, the teams, the players for sure, yeah. And maybe managers, yeah.
Let's use Bournemouth as an example because Bournemouth is kind of an outlier at the moment in the league in the sense, running numbers off the chart, pressing incredible. They go a bit more direct. Please, again, as always, don't like misconstrue that as long. They go direct. They're not so much of a kind of build and play through lines team. They will go a bit quicker into the front guys. And that's given them a lot of success this season. But then also within that, they've lost their last 3 home games to Wolves, Brentford and Ipswich. And perhaps if they'd have changed tact and gone, well, we're stronger than these and changed stylistically a little bit in those 3 games, maybe we're talking about them right in contention still for a Champions League place. Whereas actually now they've fallen off, unfortunately. And similarly, have just dropped points against your team at the weekend as well. They blew a 2-goal lead against my team in the game that they should have comfortably won as well, right? So they've tailed off. So they're a little bit more of an outlier in terms of stylistically. I think tactically, I've said this before, I think the quality of the managers in the Premier League is probably the best it's ever been. And I think a lot of these teams, let's call them the pretenders, if you will, the clubs outside the expected big 8, so many of them are getting really competitive now. We've mentioned them: Forest, Bournemouth, Fulham, Brentford. Crystal Palace are like 4th if you did a table since like the start of October or something. Like, good side, good manager, Oliver Glasner, right? And all a little bit different. You've got this kind of wave of teams more and more playing a back three. So Glasner being an example. We've got Ruben Amorim now as well. That I feel is set up to be defensively solid first and foremost, in my opinion. Like when Palace break fast with the likes of Eze and Sarr, etc., it's not boring, but they're defensively very, very strong. And I also think even for the teams that play a four, so many teams are obviously very narrow, and a lot of it is how you are set in terms of how you give the ball away. So let's move on to Ange, right? Because Ange is the biggest outlier in terms of,
I was going to say, look at this. Should we reorder the Premier League table, James, on goals scored? Just goals scored, nothing else. No other stats
Fourth,
matter.
fifth? Where are we?
Second, mate.
We're second for goals scored.
58 goals scored. I mean, you're a long way behind Liverpool at 72, but 58. City are behind you on 57. Arsenal are behind you on 56. Chelsea next on 54.
Can I just say, in terms of analysis, you telling me there's only one team scored more than 60 goals? There's no wonder there's only one team going for the title. Because ultimately, that'll be your difference maker. And by the way, this might swing in 12 months where a lot of teams go, we didn't score enough goals last year. Massively.
Gokares, welcome to the Premier League. Osimhen, welcome to the Premier League.
I'll talk Ange more, but take City as an example, right? And we spoke so much about the Rodri injury and how easy it was for teams to play through them. But do you remember you and I also one day were like, that Haaland is such a high proportion of their goals. If he is not running at a goal per game, City can't win a title.
Yeah, basically. Last season was crazy. I mean, the irony is he's still second in the table to a ridiculous Mo Salah on 21 goals. And I think non-penalty, he's top for goals scored this season because Salah's had quite a lot of penalties. But 21 goals. I'd bleed for a striker that could score 21 goals. But for City,
do us a favour.
Not enough.
While I talk about Ange, have a look at last year's league table and what the top 4 or 5 teams scored last season in terms of goals scored.
Yep.
So Ange is a real outlier, right? And you've dropped a brilliant statistic there, right? Tottenham are the second highest goal scorers in the Premier League currently heading into game week 32. Right? It doesn't feel like it, but it doesn't feel like it to me, and I watch them every week. Certainly doesn't feel like that should be correct. But one of the reasons I have kind of had faith with him, and it's gone now, by the way, but had faith in him so for such a long time is because when it's really good, it's really, really good. And it's unlike anything else in this league. It's a bit batshit. It's different to everybody else. But the consequence obviously is if Tottenham don't get it right, they will lose a football match to anybody. And no one else in this league plays like that, right? It's too aggressive. Thursday night, I'm at Stamford Bridge. Another one, wasn't a great game. On top of, Merseyside derby wasn't brilliant for the neutral Wednesday night. I'm sure Chelsea-Tottenham wasn't great Thursday night, despite having a mad start where Van der Ven kicked the ball against Jackson. It hit the post in like the first 30 seconds or so. It never lived up to what the start felt like it was going to be. Every time Tottenham lost the ball at Stamford Bridge, you're like, oh my God, we are so wide open. We can't play like this. And I'm sitting there thinking, we just can't be like this anymore. Not against an opponent that's streetwise like Chelsea. But no one else is like that. No one else is getting opened up with like a single midfielder when they lose the ball in transition with fullbacks high. No one else is doing it.
Those
and the Tottenham being so shit, it's a good reason why not to do it, right?
Yeah, true. I think the clubs I mentioned there, City, Arsenal, yourselves, with 55 to 58 goals scored, right? Let's assume you score a goal a game for the rest of the season. You're all mid-60s to late 60s in terms of goals scored for this season. I think you'll all end up between 65 and 70 goals scored this season. Let me read you last year, right? Manchester City, 96. Arsenal, 91. Liverpool, 86. Villa, 76. Tottenham, 74. Chelsea, 77. Newcastle, 85. It's not until you get down to 8th in the table, Manchester United, that you get below 60. So all of those clubs were almost 80 goals or more. And this season, you're going to struggle to get to 70 goals. And that's 7 or 8 clubs there, James.
There's something in this, isn't there?
Just curious about goals conceded, but the goals conceded looks pretty similar. Having said that, Villa, Tottenham, Chelsea, Newcastle all conceded more than 60 goals as well. So the lower clubs were scoring Like Burnley scored 41, Luton 52, Brentford Forest 49, Brentford 56. I mean, some of these clubs are similar goals scored to the guys contending for Europe this season.
I've just sent you something to have a look at. Again, we hadn't discussed this before. This is a graph. I know I'll retweet this later in the day after we've posted the podcast. So you can have a look for it.
Was that
Rob
on
T.
email? Email.
No, I sent you on WhatsApp, mate. Rob T is from a tweet from Rob T FPL, looking at trends, our attacking trends falling flat, right? And he's got a nice little graph up which shows the actual goals scored per game, what the market projects in terms of goals per game going into a weekend, so the combine of all 10 fixtures, and the XG per game. Now, the market projections are slowly going down week on week in terms of the number of goals. And the XG per game, the last 2 game weeks, has been the lowest of the season. In terms of XG, the last 2 Premier League weekends, the XG, all the games combined, has been the lowest over the last 2
And
game weeks all season.
and
And it's
only
been
clean
declining
sheets.
for weeks.
And there was only clean sheets in 2 games, which were both 0-0. Chelsea, Brentford, and Manchester United, Man City. There was no clean sheets in any other games from the weekend.
It was a lot last week, though, wasn't it? I mean, I watched 3-1
you're
nils
talking about the
last
week.
midweek.
You're talking about the week before.
So the last 2, yeah.
Oh, okay, fine. Understood. Sorry, I thought you meant just the last week. So, okay, then I understand. But yeah, crazy.
So, I mean, that's interesting. The fact that market projections are projecting less goals to be scored. The XG per game is coming down quite a lot. Does that run into there's too much football?
Oh, I was about to segue into that, James. So we think tactically the way teams are set up is not designed to score as many goals, which is statistically
Well, I think it's designed not to
proven.
concede as many goals, ultimately.
Okay, yeah, that's true as well. Teams are getting good at defending. Are players tired? I mean, this is something that's on my list, and it's probably on your list of things as well, in terms of we're at that stage of the season where players might have played up to 40, 45 games already by now. And so they are a little bit tired. Is that affect the quality of games? We get more rotated teams. Should that not add to the drama of more crazy chaos and more ridiculous games? When you look at the likes of Villa changing 8 players and then still winning handsomely and playing really well, particularly in the first half, maybe not, maybe less so. I do think there's something in the amount of games that people are playing, but I'm not sure what impact it's having. Interested in your thoughts on that.
When you think Premier League, not even just now, just historically, you hear people say, Premier League's best league in the world. If someone said that to you, you think Premier League's the best league in the world, right? And in the past, you might not say yes now, but you might have in the past. Why would you have said yes?
Action, drama, end-to-end football. Yeah.
So, I mean, there's got to be a big impact in the fact that we're looking at the league table and saying there's 7, maybe 8 teams with something to play for, basically, really. And I get it. Every place in the league is worth 2.5 million and stuff like that. But for the players, West Ham are in pre-season and have been for months. West
Yeah, I
Ham are
get
in
that.
like a
'Cause
glorified pre-season for next season. They might start next season really well as a consequence.
historically, anything can happen on any given day between any 2 teams. And I think now it's still the same. In fact, it might be even better. And I was thinking of putting it in the context of La Liga, for example. Only 2 teams, maybe 2.5 if you add Atleti into it, could win the league. And it's a bit of a procession. Does that reduce the excitement?
Interesting you mentioned La Liga. Barcelona dropped points at home to Real Betis at the weekend. Real Madrid lost at home to Valencia. Ahead of massive Champions League weeks.
Did they rotate, do you know, heavily?
A little bit, but not hugely. Like, yeah, 1 or 2 left, 1 or 2 of the big ones left out. But you'd still comfortably think they're both winning those games.
Interesting. Yeah. So before more football midweek, where they've got more other things and eyes on many prizes, quality of the football. Well, quality of the football doesn't necessarily drop off if you're a Betis fan or a Valencia fan. You're living your best life there.
How many times have we mentioned Villa at Southampton and this weekend and expecting them really to rotate?
Expecting them, telling them they should rotate as well.
Exactly. But also, do you know what I think this weekend as well? I think if Villa, for example, picked let's say they've got the strongest team against PSG, and then the same 11 against Southampton. I think whatever their perceived second 11 is would do better than the first 11 because they'll be like, right, I want to prove myself. I want to try and get in the
Yeah,
team at the
yeah,
weekend.
yeah, yeah. Because
Those
but they've got strength in depth. Some clubs don't.
the
Because
main
my
11,
second 11 would be Pony.
the main 11. Yeah, no, I get that. The main 11 would be thinking, oh, I've got PSG again in 3 days as well. Like, so you're better off rotating there at that point. This comes back to something me and Clate spoke about the other week about almost like paying not for the best product, almost forcing these teams to like rotate their best players out and stuff like that. Like the Barcelona example is Rafinha didn't start for Barcelona at the weekend, right? So I just think if you've got that scenario, now Villa's a little bit different as well because they're obviously trying to chase this Champions League place for next season. But clearly the priority for this week is the Paris Saint-Germain games, isn't it?
Has to be. I mean, it's once in a generation. It's not once in a generational. You hope they're going to be playing these games more consistently. But look at what Bayern Munich meant earlier in the season for them for that. PSG is on the same level as that. So, yeah, it has to be.
So Villa, we're saying this week, more important games in Europe. Arsenal, more important games in Europe. Manchester United and Tottenham, more important games in Europe. Right, so that's going to be 40% of your fixtures this weekend coming in the Premier League, where one of the teams has got a more important game being played before and afterwards.
Yep.
Now that can happen at this stage of the season, and has probably always happened where that's happened to someone.
Next season, we're talking about having 7 or 8 teams in Europe. It's only likely to be more.
The volume of the football in terms of for Villa playing PSG Wednesday and Tuesday and Southampton Saturday in the middle, you cannot expect them to play the same team. It's almost bonkers if they did, particularly when they've got such a deep squad and quality as you'd mentioned, right? I think there's a massive fatigue here. Remember, obviously, European Championships last summer as well. So you've got a number of players don't feel like they've had a break now for kind of coming up to 2 years. I think that's playing a part. And if you're a footballer that's played kind of consecutively for sort of 20, 21 months, and you're playing for one of these teams at the moment that's got very little to play for, I'm not saying you're down in tools, but it's not just the physical tiredness, it's the mental tiredness.
I mean, you mentioned with on the Patreon Q&A yesterday, you were talking with Gary about a potential player strike as something you think could
we'll
happen
get there eventually. Yeah.
Within the next 12 months, 18 months?
I don't know. But I think there will eventually, there's every chance eventually there'll be a coming together of players, not just from the Premier League, as in all the top European leagues. Everyone goes, we're not playing this weekend.
I think a lot of this is driven by UEFA and FIFA, right? Because domestically, we're reducing the number of games people have to play by reducing the replays and all of that kind of stuff. We're reducing domestic games, but they've added 2 extra Champions League games. They're adding the World Club Championship Cup, whatever the hell. FIFA and UEFA are driving most of the increased additional games, I would say.
But you're not reducing it, because if you take player X, who's a star for team in Europe, they ain't playing that FA Cup third round replay anyway.
I mean, it's UEFA and FIFA's competitions that are increasing the number of games, not the domestic competitions that are increasing the number of games.
Although we could certainly be decreasing the number of games in our competitions as well. Carabao Cup semis, it's a discussion I've had in the past about the EFL and why that won't get kind of changed anytime soon. There's a mental fatigue, there's a physical fatigue. If you've got those 2 things in play, going back to tactics, what's the best thing to do?
Rotate.
2 things that are king to defensive football, right? Defending your penalty area, well, this is very simplistic talk.
Low block.
Defending your penalty area properly, right? Kick ball. If you give the ball away, you're at risk. And a lot of the teams at the moment have little differences, but the likes of City, Arsenal, Chelsea, I think particularly those 3, are very similar in their pretense. First and foremost is don't give the ball away in dangerous positions.
You know, a phrase I've been hearing more and more, and it was talked about with you guys with Chelsea as well, is this horseshoe, like going around keeping the ball and going in a horseshoe, in and around and in and around.
About it a lot,
The horseshoe all the time. That's the easiest way to keep the ball, right? In that kind of situation where they're just going in a kind of semicircle and side to side for 3, 4, 5 minutes. It's very safe, isn't it?
Yeah, but what's the safest thing about that is if you lose the ball, so
you're in position.
Take an example where, I don't know, Arsenal playing at Nottingham Forest, right? If the ball breaks on the edge of the box, like it broke for Anthony Elanga against Manchester United last week, right? United weren't set from that corner breakdown in terms of how they were going to stop the opponent. In that horseshoe on the edge of the box, if Anthony Elanga gets the ball there in that position, he cannot score. I realise he's miles from goal, but he showed you last week what a player like that is capable of. It's set.
The chances are low.
The worst case scenario you're going to do at that moment is if he does get 1v1, you're fouling him.
Yeah.
Because he's so far from goal, you might even get away with not getting booked, right? I think there is a very big safety aspect to football tactics in the league at the moment that people don't like. But I also think that these tactics are a consequence of the amount of football.
Yeah,
I think it's one of the reasons why an Arteta doesn't... It feels like to us as a neutral that Arteta doesn't let Arsenal go enough. You watch Arsenal sometimes, you think, you're better than the opponent. Like, let yourselves go a little bit. But I think it's also down to a little bit of fatigue and the amount of football as well. That this style of high energy doesn't really work if you've got so many games. Full circle. Look at Tottenham. Look at Tottenham under Ange trying to play intense football with playing
losing
Thursday,
games,
Sunday every
but
week.
also injuries like galore as well. There's been the impact of that.
But I've also said to you about Iraola. We spoke about this on Patreon last Wednesday. One of my real concerns with Iraola would be he'd come in. The style's different in terms of it's less possession orientated. But then what happens if he did get Tottenham to 5th or 6th and then Tottenham got to play Thursday, Sunday again the season after? Like, is it even manageable under his style? We don't know. I'd be fascinated to see what would happen to Bournemouth if they qualified for Europe this season and kept trying to play at that intensity next season.
So it will be interesting to see.
No, I don't think they will, mate.
No, you don't think they will now?
No, I don't, unfortunately.
They may fall away.
And Ryan Christie's been ruled out for the season. He's so important.
Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah. Let me put something else out there and get your thoughts on it, because I'm not sure where I stand on this, but obviously it's clearly going to have an impact. The consequence of games. So title race done very early. Relegation battle done very early. Though the European places is still pretty competitive. Do you think the lack of impact of these games has an impact on the quality of the football we're seeing?
I.e.?
As in, what, they don't matter as much. Like, Arsenal can't win the league anymore, so they're just playing out. All right, but you know what I mean. Or relegation is kind of sort of done now. So
that's definitely done.
There's less consequence of
There's
these
more
games.
chance of Arsenal win the league than Ipswich or Leicester catching Wolves.
Champions League and Europa League is still a little bit competitive, though it's getting less and less. Like, more and more teams are dropping away. But do you think the impact of where you finish in the league and what that impact has on European places and stuff, the title race being done early and relegation being done early, do you think that's impacting the quality of football?
It might do, because I even think for those teams at the top that are challenging for, say, 3rd, 4th, 5th, I think they've all got a safety first kind of element to all of them. People might say, oh, what about Villa? Villa got really good ball carriers. Unai Emery sets his team up properly, right?
Yeah.
You're also not a team that wants to give the ball away, right? City, we know, City and Chelsea is kind of comparable in terms of how they keep the ball. And Newcastle have shown that in the toughest games, Eddie Howe knows how to set his team up well. And even last night, they blew Leicester away in 20 minutes and went, this is one. And if they'd have wanted to go and win 7-8-0, they would have. Do I blame them for not doing it? No, not at all. And this is also a side that hadn't played for 5 days beforehand and doesn't have another fixture for 6 days. So actually, they've got the space in. I'm looking at them and I'm thinking, yeah, you got more important games to come. Save a bit of your mental and physical for what's to come next. You can't blame the teams.
Yeah, I understand that. There's 3 other letters that I want to talk about, but I don't really want to
I wrote it down as well, mate.
But I don't want to talk about. But I know we should probably talk about. Though I don't know, does that impact the quality of football that we're seeing, or are we talking about it impacting the spectacle?
It does. I'll explain. I'll explain why it does.
And the 3 letters I'm talking about are VAR.
Right. So I've experienced in the last 2 football matches I've been to 2 very close VAR offside calls. One that went for my team and one that went against my team. And those 2 decisions combined took over 10 minutes.
Yeah, they were long, really long.
I mean, talking about the one at the Southampton game at the weekend that we had disallowed was absurd.
Sarr at Chelsea.
No, not the Sarr goal, the Chelsea disallowed goal, the Casado goal.
Oh, okay, sorry, that one.
Yeah, we'll even leave
Sarr was offside as well, though.
No. It was a Chelsea player.
The foul.
I think it was Colwell
sorry, Sarr was the foul that he did committed before. Sorry, yeah.
Leave,
Colwill.
leave the side one out. I want you to just use the offside ones because one went for my team and one went against my team, and they were both very, very similar instances.
And also, semi-automated is part of tomorrow's conversation, but will that help? Is a part of the discussion.
No, is my strong opinion not?
Yeah, it won't help. It's not even. It doesn't even debate. It won't help. I agree with
They
you.
reckon. I'll drop a stat now. They reckon that semi-automated offside, on average, improves decision making by 31 seconds. Right. Well, when I've waited 5 minutes, 4.5 minutes.
What's an extra 30 seconds? Listen, inside the ground. I know this is crazy. If there's a VAR check, I think about it as do I need to go for a WAS because I think it's piss break time because I know by the time I do it, come back. They'll still be deliberating.
Yeah, on things like these, yeah. Look, I can only sum it best to you like this. My dad is the most blinkered football fan in the world, right? You know, the kind of tinted glasses. He just sees white and navy blue through his glasses, right?
Yeah.
Even he on Sunday just went, just allowed to go and play football.
Yeah.
Like, you actually go beyond the point of even caring if your team scored or not. Right. So that's a conversation we've had in the past affecting that to atmospheres that Calyton and I discussed. But what we don't really think about is the impact on the players. Because actually that football match on Sunday died after that football decision. And that's despite the fact Tottenham scored again quite quickly afterwards. The football match died. Southampton were kind of wide open. They had time to sort themselves out a little bit. Admittedly, didn't on the second goal. But Tottenham's pace in the game just completely dissipated. You got a team that wants to play high energy, right? Keep the ball moving fast, and you stop the game for 5 minutes. Right? That's going to have an impact. And sometimes that can't be helped, right? Head injuries and things like that, right? Or bad injuries. Can't be helped. This VAR bollocks, honestly, both times in the ground was like, just give Chelsea the goal or just cancel our goal. Can we just play football? Now, admittedly, that's also me not really giving much of a shit about Tottenham's league season. Rather just play the football. But it's terrible for the players to have that break that long. And you can disagree with a lot of what he says, but he's absolutely right. This isn't what it was designed for. That is killing the flow of football matches.
Yeah. What do you think the impact was at Chelsea? So Chelsea could have gone 2-0 up. They're now back to 1-0 up. Did that affect that game
2-0, that's game completely
game
finished for Chelsea.
It was alive again for you, but then also you weren't really in it anyway to be able. It wasn't like it was an even game where you come back. They were still dominant.
The point is, neither decision impacted the results either, right? Chelsea were always going to win last Thursday, and my team was always going to win on Sunday, right? So I'm even picking two examples here where I don't think it was really having an impact on what the football result was going to be. It's just not really helpful for the game. And the Tottenham Southampton example is very different to the Chelsea Tottenham one because Chelsea Tottenham obviously had a bit of needle about it, right? The Tottenham Southampton game was not even a tackle in the game, I don't think, barely, right? But it's not helpful for these players asking them to, we want them to play at intensity and then you stop the game for 5 minutes and then just go again. I mean, the Tottenham Southampton one was like not long before half time. You might as well have said to them, go and have your half time now and we'll just play a 60-minute second half. Probably would have been better for everybody. You obviously would not do that. So no, that's not helping. And I don't think we think about the consequence on players. We've spoken about it in terms of, could VAR be having an impact on injuries? I don't think there's many games that have had an interruption that long that have been as good after the interruption as they were before. And again, I picked two shit games here. Neither were good games of football, right?
Would you believe me, James, if I said that Tottenham committed 16 fouls on Sunday, Southampton committed 20? 36 fouls between you. There was a few tackles in the game.
How many in the second half?
No idea.
Because I completely lost interest. And I think the players did as well. There's probably more fouls because I was thinking, I can't bother to run anymore. Save myself for another day. How many in the second half?
Let's have a look here. It's not telling me fouls. It's not telling me on SofaScore. It's not easy to see. Fine. What else is on your list, mate? Or is that the list that we've covered off there? That's quite a bit.
That's mainly the list. Yeah, I mean, VAR tactics is obviously a big thing. I think too much football is a huge consequence. The competitiveness of the season and I think who you support does have an impact. Like I said, I think that'd be Forest, Liverpool, Fulham, Bournemouth fans thing. And I've really enjoyed this season. I'd say one impact as well one more, is stoppage time, which actually in the past has been part consequence of VAR. But we've had less minutes played this season than last season. And it's one reason we should expect goals to be coming down. I spoke about this a few weeks ago. So last year we had these mad games with like 10 minutes added on. Think of like Tottenham being losing 1-0 to Sheffield United in the 97th minute and winning. I think for Chelsea it was 99th minute losing to Manchester United and winning. Like it's crazy. Those games were memorable.
Is there statistically
drama
less late winners in this?
It's got to be.
Yeah, I think so as well.
There was so much more time played last year.
Yeah.
Also, there's also things happening at the moment where I give you an example. So there was a stoppage play. I think it might have even been straight after Pape Sarr's goal on Thursday night. It was correctly disallowed, despite the fact that also took way too long. I only needed one look to see that was a foul. But the game restarted with a drop ball for Pape Sarr, not for Pape Sarr, for Robert Sanchez, I think. No, mind you, must have been a foul to Caicedo. But there was a later period where there was a drop ball and it was given to Sanchez. I'm telling you, I looked at the screen, it was 40 seconds before they let the ball go out of his hand.
Wow. Waste of time.
Yeah, but because you know that new rule's coming in next year as well, they are absolutely at the moment, they're like, we're not punishing that at all. Do what you want.
Doesn't it help? Slows the game down a lot.
There's a lot of things slowing it down, but also I think, yes, we've got less. I'd be interested in the ball in play numbers. I reckon ball in play is the ball is in play much less this season than it was last season. Certainly in the start of last season, they really got the average up massively to sort of circa 60 minutes in play. So I think that's down a lot. And I think, again, to come back to tactics, most teams are quite happy with that. We're even seeing it offensive now, aren't we? Sorry, I don't want to pick on Arsenal, but it's a well-known one. The Arsenal take ages to take their corners.
Yeah,
even when they're attacking.
Yeah.
Not the only team, but I think it was first highlighted that Arsenal were really doing it. Again, my team gets a goal kick and the ball's in play within like 2 seconds. And guess which team's having a really bad season?
Yeah, doesn't show that it always works.
The less risk at the moment is working. Now, I do think that we're probably in a bit of a cycle, and I think it will change. And I think we'll get out of this.
We're always in cycles, James, because football does go in circles, and things become popular, and then don't.
But ultimately, at the moment, and I think probably the best example is what I said to you yesterday about the Manchester derby that I didn't record it.
And that says,
I thought it would be shit, and I don't look at any of the fixtures this weekend and think, oh, I'm desperate to watch that.
Yeah. Well, look, listeners, we're really interested in your opinions as well. So if you're watching on YouTube, jump in the comments and give us an idea of how you feel about the quality of football. If you're over on X, jump in the tweet that James puts out with the podcast. It's at Planet FPL Pod, where you can do that and let us know what you think on the quality of football now as well. James, what do the listeners have for the rest of the week? We'll give our Patreon a shout out and wrap.
I think quality, by the way, just to add on, the quality of football's fine.
The entertainment value.
The entertainment is...
And excitement.
Correct, yeah. Calyton James show tomorrow. Clash of Correspondence Thursdays, Newcastle versus Palace with Simon Bibby and Rory McLaughlin Dad. Ask James scheduled for 2 p.m. on Friday. If you want to support the show, it's www.patreon.com/planetfpl. We've got additional content there, and it includes me leaving this podcast to go and record a UCL Fantasy preview with Calyton. And I bet you there is some entertainment in the Champions League this week.
Lovely jubbly. If you want to support the show, patreon.com, you know where to go. You get all the additional content, Slack, prize leagues, and a whole bunch of other stuff as well. Though in the meantime, just hope you enjoyed the show. Hope you enjoyed the debate. Share the podcast wherever you can. Give it a thumbs up. And back at you tomorrow. Stay safe. Look after yourselves. Ciao for now.
Thanks, everyone. Be nice to each other. Cue music, please. Man child.